Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Councilman Herb Smith for the moment. I'm Chairman of Planning, and welcome. What I'd like to do is introduce my colleagues and everyone here at the table. And the way I normally do this, because I have a bad memory, I know everybody
I
here,
cut this off.
and we're gonna let her
promise
turn
you I
her phone.
did. I promise you I did.
But that's all right. Little levity here, joke, but make it not so tense. But anyway, so let everyone introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Councilman
Good
Brown.
evening, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Mike Brown, Councilman Lodge. How's everyone doing this evening?
Linda Barnes Caldwell, Councilwoman of the 5th District.
Lavita Sparks Wade, Councilwoman of the 6th District.
Just come on around, table.
Sarah Kavita, Planning Director.
Rebecca Wyatt, 1st District.
Ron Brewer, Councilman at Large, Council President.
Okay, and as I introduce myself the first time, I'm Councilman Herb Smith, and we are just now joined by our council attorney, Williams. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. It's a very warm day, but you know, it's a blessing to be here and have those warm days. So what we have on the agenda for today is CPO 2019-42, an ordinance amending Title 15 Land Uses Chapter 123 entitled Zoning Code. Petitioner is Robin Crisp, 520 North Miami Street, Gary, Indiana. Property in question is the same, 520 Miami Street. Mr. Kabinas, we're going to start with you first, and then we'll bring up Mr. Chris.
Sure.
Okay, can you give us a recap of what happened with zoning?
Yes. Ms. Crisp is petitioning for a special use permit to operate a home daycare at 520 Miami Street. The BZA heard this petition on June 11th, and they voted to not approve. BZA found that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use would be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community based upon information received from neighbors. Many neighbors wrote or called in with concerns regarding Ms. Crisp's ability and willingness to maintain her property to the standards necessary to operate this type of business without disrupting the neighborhood. Neighbors cited large piles of trash and debris on her property as problematic, for example. 71 notices were mailed to neighbors within 400 feet. 35 were delivered and provided no response. 15 were opposed. 2 were not opposed. 27 were undeliverable. And as we mentioned at previous meetings, receiving 15 complaints from neighbors for this type of petition is very abnormal, which is why BZA was very concerned with the public opposition to the permit. So this was on third reading at the previous council meeting and then came back.
Right, we brought it back to planning, but we did not want to kill it. We want to give her an opportunity to address her neighbors and come back and, you know, confer with us. Okay, let's.
Mr. President, last time it was 13 opposes. How did we get 2 more?
They called in since then. I keep a running tally for the record.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay, Ms. Chris. Okay, we need to speak to you. Come on up here and let's chit chat. How are you today?
I'm good.
Okay, as you just heard, that there are now 15 people opposed to you opening a daycare. And we ask that you go up to your neighbors and you speak with them. So give us some idea of what happened there.
Okay, I brought in other letters that did not oppose. I really don't have any neighbors but one. And I was up under the impression at the last meeting at the Art House that when you guys came out, I wasn't aware, but apparently you were, because I was advised to come back to the building committee and have them to take care of that ravine as far as blocking it off. And so I thought that was the reason that I was here.
The building department to block that off?
Fencing that ravine off.
Who advised you to do that?
I thought it was you.
No, not at all. I said that was a problem for me because that drop off was right behind your house. Never once did I say that anyone would do it.
No. I came in to, contact the building committee, say, I don't understand the process. So you can use certain terminology, and if I'm not used to it, then I'll come and do my own research. And so what I did was, you had a later,
Subcontractors.
contractors list.
Okay.
And I went by that, and I have the contractors to, take care of that. I'm gonna use the same ones that, I have that's fencing the restaurant. If you like to.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying that you're gonna fill in the ravine, or you gonna brick it off, or you gonna do something to it?
Yes, sir. I will make sure that it is secure, that, there shall not be any accidents unless they come up from the city, and I don't have anything to do with that part.
I guess the other question is, how did you address your neighbors, in regard to their opposition to your project?
Well, from the proof that I brought in at the second meeting, they're not pleased that I would, bring that kind of proof forward of the harassment.
Mr. Chair, can I back up 1 minute? Yes,
Sure.
here. I'm looking on here for fencing. Okay. This is board, this wasn't presented at the last meeting though, because this is dated 5/22/2019, and we talked about this at the meeting and never once did this come up.
She just went and got it.
No. This is 5/22/19.
I'm having work
Board on
done.
the fence, is this, but what I'm asking, what I'm saying, when this was brought up, you never disclosed that you was having that problem taken care of. So what I'm asking is you having any other fencing work done on your property besides what we talked about?
Yes, sir. Right now, as I was saying with this new contract list, I've contacted, I think it's 4 or 5, everybody's backed up. I'm on a waiting list here with Hickson, so for the additional work also.
Okay, but this is not what we talked about as far as ravine. This is not a,
They will do the
this is not a
additional.
list statement they're gonna do the work, that's what I'm saying. That's something that you already have currently in progress, is going on your property.
Yes,
So that doesn't look good.
So basically, that's just about a fence or something.
On somewhere else on the property, not what we're talking about in question.
But I understand the petitioner to be saying that she's contacted the contractor, and he would be able to fence off the ravine as well.
Right,
Yeah.
but what she presented me is not that. That's
Right.
something that she's already having done on her property. This is work that she's currently having done. That's not what we're talking about in question. So that's why I gave her back the paperwork that she did. Yes.
And, Mr. Chair, I believe one of the things that we asked of her was to go and speak with her neighbors so that,
That's what I'm trying to get to.
okay.
No, you're fine, go ahead. But that's where I'm trying to go.
She just went right down there.
Yeah,
You can
we need you to address the issue of the 15 neighbors that are opposed to you.
I have no idea who the 15 friends and family members are. I only have one neighbor.
But when we
What's
closed
your-
our meeting, our last time we spoke to you, we asked that you talk to your neighbors and see if you could resolve some of that.
Yes, sir.
What did you do to do that?
Well, because of the holiday, right after the meeting, I had some issues with NIPSCO, power going out, air conditioning going out. For the weekend, I left. And when I came back, I got right on the contractors, and I'm here, but I haven't seen them.
So you made no contact with them?
No.
I got a question. You said a 400 feet radius? So that's her block and what else?
It's 400 feet, so it's her block, and then it's people behind her on side. So we've got addresses that are on, Miami, Hemlock, Ironwood, Forest. Primarily those 3 streets. I have the tallies of who wrote back and was opposed. Like what addresses, some people did ask to stay anonymous. But I do have those addresses. So,
So you're talking about a circular radius, right?
Uh-huh.
Center of the house out there.
we do it from the house itself, from the property itself, outward 400 feet.
So that encompasses a large, pretty large area.
It looks like it goes all the way to Montgomery.
Okay.
And you said you sent out how many?
71 were mailed.
Any other questions from council members?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had a question. She mentioned something regarding her power went out and then she left the facility, well, her home. Do you have any provisions in the event that if you were able to be open and in the event that there would be a power outage, do you have any idea of having a generator or anything available? Or do you have a plan of any sort in the event that that occurs in the future?
Yes, sir. Once before the daycare is actually up and running, it would be a generator as a backup system.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Now, is that something that you get installed, a generator? Because I don't want you to be telling us something we want to hear. But if you're not going to get a generator, just, but.
I would not stand
Because
before the council.
what I'm saying is, it's not a requirement. So, I don't want you to say you're gonna do something just to try and get this passed,
No.
But if that's all. I don't want you to
For
feel
the
any pressure to
safety.
try and get anything
For
passed.
the safety of the staff and myself
Okay.
and the children, because it has been brought to my attention, I would go through all measures that I would have to secure us.
Okay.
Any questions from the public? Okay, Ms. Chris, our next council meeting is going to be on the 16th at the Hart House at 6 p.m. And if there are no further questions,
Mr. Chair, one last question.
sure.
Your neighbor directly to you, next door to you, have you contacted that neighbor? What is their feel on it?
Well, because of the issue with her dogs and the manure in the back and front yard at the bedroom windows, we really don't speak unless I have to clean up some more.
Okay, and the neighbor directly across from you, if you're looking out from your house straight to the right, what's the relationship with that neighbor?
Thank you. We had parking with her, I guess she has a party every year, and the cars are usually parked at my home, and I ended up having to call the police because she doesn't have the parking space.
So basically, there's just an ongoing
Because I was never at home.
with you and your neighbors, right?
No, not unintentions, not deliberately.
And I asked that question because you asked what neighbors, and there are neighbors. I had to pull it up on Google Earth. There are neighbors on your block there. So I just want to know what's the relationship, because it's important if you're going to have a business and have additional traffic come through there, that there should be some type of good relationship with the neighbors there, some kind of way. But I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask one last time, any further questions from council members? And I also want to note that we've been joined by Councilwoman Mary Brown of the 3rd District. Councilwoman Brown, we pretty much, just in summary, had conversation with Ms. Crisp in regard to the proposed daycare at 520
Lion
North Lion Street. when we left our meeting, we had asked that two things be done. One, try to have a conversation with your neighbors to resolve that issue. And two, Councilman Brewer had some concerns about the ravine in the back. And in regard to those two issues, Ms. Chris indicated that one, she contacted some contractors and is doing some work on her yard in regard to a fence. And I guess it will include the ravine, but she had not contacted.
It's
the
not
neighbors.
done yet.
Not the neighbors. So that's where we are with this right now. So if you have any questions, Ms. Chris is still there. And you're welcome to ask her. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, Ms. Chris, okay, our next council meeting is July 16th at 6 o'clock at the Art House. You know where it is now. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, we only had 2 items on our agenda for tonight, and we're gonna go to our second item on the agenda, which is CPO 2019-46, an ordinance defining and regulating the establishment of public home-based business in residential areas, sponsored by Sarah Cabeas, Director of Planning. Ms. Cabeas, could you please give us an overview of the ordinance proposed?
Sure. So I have been working with the law department and in Councilman Smith, we've talked about home-based businesses that receive clients that where residents complain because of the changes in the flow of traffic, changes because of parking, changes because of general sort of nuisance complaints to the neighborhood. The complaints we receive are primarily, I live in a residential neighborhood, I own my home, I don't live in a business district, I don't want businesses in my neighborhood. We have no interest in entirely curtailing home-based businesses. Small businesses are a major part of our community. However, there are, thousands of residential blocks in the street. So what this, in the city, excuse me. So what this ordinance does is restricts the number of home-based businesses that are open to the public, so that have clients or customers coming in to 2 per block. What that would do is essentially minimize any impacts to traffic that other residents on the blocks would experience because of clients coming in and out. It would minimize parking issues, and it would also just help to maintain the residential character of residential neighborhoods. In my conversations with the law department, and Attorney Pohl is here to answer any questions as well. This falls under, this is something that you can regulate through zoning. Residential neighborhoods, exist for a reason. And allowing businesses to open in residential neighborhoods is something that a city can choose to do or choose not to do. And so this is allowing them within a certain frame.
So basically, you're not opposing businesses in a residential neighborhood, but we're just looking for a way to regulate it.
Exactly.
In a way, so that the integrity of the neighborhood is maintained.
If I could add a couple of things.
Sure, Attorney Pohl,
Yeah.
please go on.
Rodney Pohl, City Attorney. The ordinance specifically defines these are public home-based businesses. So those are defined as businesses that have more than 2 visitors per week. So if you've got a consulting firm that you're running out of your home, you've got a law office that that you're a tax consultant, you're basically getting things just sent to you electronically. It doesn't affect you. It's if you're registering, and it would be something that I believe that would go on the GPL, that they would be operating a home business, and they would be affirming that yes, I will have more than two people coming to my home per week as part of my business model. So that's the first. The second is that it's grandfathers in all the businesses that are there. So even if you have more than 2 public home-based businesses on a block now, they get to maintain. This isn't going to be retroactive. We're not shutting down any businesses. But yeah, Sarah's absolutely right. What this does then is it just curtails the establishing of several home-based businesses, public home-based businesses on a city block, and that just is gonna make sure that you've got a better flow of traffic, better parking, and it's hopefully going to encourage other businesses that are out there that are operating to get licenses, to get themselves established, and to report to the city, because we know that there are a lot of businesses out there that are home-based that probably have maybe 5 or 6, maybe 20 different home-based visitors that are coming on a weekly basis that don't have business licenses. Well, this is also an incentive to make sure that you're getting established, and that you're making it known that, hey, you know, I'm here, I was here first. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
my question, who besides the Director of Planning, Ms. Kabitas, is sponsoring this ordinance? Because is it proper that does somebody else have to sponsor it? Does not the mayor have to be?
Well, the mayor should be added, but an ordinance can be sponsored from anybody from the executive branch. It's assumed that it's being endorsed by the mayor.
Okay,
Typically,
'cause I
the
didn't
mayor
see-
would be added as an
Right.
additional sponsor. So to clear that up, I would just recommend adding the mayor as an additional sponsor. But a department head surely can be on there as a sponsor. But since I'm speaking, let me just give you my concern about this. One, I think it could possibly violate the Commerce Clause, as I said in the previous meeting, that you would be telling businesses that it's a first come, first served basis when they meet the standards. And I'm happy Attorney Pohl addressed that, because I didn't know how you all constituted a home-based business. So it's now, if it's 2 or more cars, seems to be the general standard. Second, the way it stands now, it's a case-by-case basis. It has to come to this council, you make a determination. Once you pass this, there is no more case-by-case basis. Once 2 businesses that meet the requirements, you have created law that bars any other business that falls under that standard from ever being allowed within that block. And you in fact would be, in my opinion, stripping power from yourself. You'll be creating a law where you no longer have a say. If Councilman Brewer has a daycare and Attorney Williams has a daycare on that block, that's it. No one else can ever come on that block based on your own rule. Whereas the way it's written now, they would have an opportunity to come before this body, and you will be able to make a determination, as we do every week, as to whether that is applicable to the block or whether the community objects to it. Let's say the community does not object. Say a person wants to build a 3rd business in that block, and they have 100% support in the community. You would be barred from ever allowing them to do that by way of this ordinance. Doesn't matter what the community wants. There's 2 businesses within that community that meets the standard of a home base. You would forever be barred from bringing any other business. You can't violate your own rule. You can't violate your own ordinance. So those are my concerns. I appreciate having an explanation now as to what constitutes a home-based business, but I think it's a scary precedent. I think whenever you create a law that takes power from yourself is a scary precedent. But I'm not 100% sure that we would not be challenged on this. I have a right as a citizen, the free flow of commerce, to open up a business. You absolutely have a right to control where those businesses are, as you do already. The need now to create an extra layer of bureaucracy as to a standard of what constitutes a business, I don't see where it's necessary when you still have to make the final decision as the ordinance is currently written. But again, those are my concerns. Of course, you are free to act accordingly.
If I may, real quick, one of the other things that I guess I forgot to mention too, these only apply to businesses that are open in structures that were originally designed as well. So if you have corner stores or something like that, those don't apply. Obviously, those are, we're talking about are strictly residential blocks where there's not, there doesn't happen to be a corner store that's already there. So if you have a corner store, that doesn't count for those purposes. Likely that may either have been something that maybe that block or that corner store may be a B5 just for that corner. That's also another possibility, is that you, in a situation where you did want to allow another business to open up in a residential area, that could be rezoned. They could do a rezone on that. So I have to respectfully disagree that you're not forever disallowing businesses on the block. One of the other points though I definitely want to make is that this is also we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not inventing the wheel, I should say. This is something that's been done in several other communities. You have a list of other cities that have done this exactly, and actually have done so in a much more restrictive way, where we're saying, okay, on a per block basis. There's several municipalities, throughout the United States that this across the board in all residential areas. So you can't have more than 2 people that'll come to your house, per week. It doesn't matter if there are two other businesses that have more than that. So I don't think it violates the Commerce Clause strictly for the idea that if you did, you would have had people from Hartford, Connecticut, Cleveland, Ohio. What are some of the other municipalities?
Louisville, Kentucky says no more than 2 customers at once can go to a business that's located in a house. Hartford, Connecticut, no more than 4 at once. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, no more than 8 in 24 hours or 2 at once. Boston, Massachusetts says no customer or client visits permitted at all for home-based businesses. Tampa, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Cincinnati, Ohio all dictate that no home-based business can cause increased traffic. So this is something that is commonly done.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that was going to be my follow-up question, but to follow up with that, are there any cities in the state of Indiana?
That's a good question.
Because, I don't think so, because of the child care home business that the state passed. That's would be one of the reasons. And do these other states have child care home businesses?
Well, are you sure? Okay. The law that was passed by the state in, 2017 or 20, went into effect July 2018 after the, unfortunate incident in Maryville with, that essentially created a state law where home child care centers cannot be treated any differently than any other home-based business. And that's what this law is doing. It's treating, what this ordinance would be doing is treating all public home-based businesses the same. It doesn't matter if your 2 clients who are coming in are adults or if they're children. It doesn't, it's treating them across the board similarly. So actually this, it was designed with the state law of Indiana in mind, but Attorney Poole and I can definitely do research to determine if other cities in Indiana are using similar laws.
What law was passed in 2018 in regards to?
So it's Indiana Code, section 3674-1108. Section 1108, it says you cannot exclude a child care home from a residential district solely because the child care home is a business. You can't impose limits on the number of children that may be served by a child care home at any one time. And you can't impose requirements or restrictions upon child care homes that vary from the requirements and restrictions imposed upon child care homes by rules adopted by the state. So basically you can't have conflicting state and city laws.
I thought it was gonna say something that would have been. I was thinking it was totally different. It was gonna be restrictive. That was going to be more restrictive versus less restrictive.
So basically this is saying if you're gonna make a law about home daycares, you have to make a law about physician's offices or
It didn't help.
which is essentially.
I think and she's right, what it did is it created uniformity. You couldn't treat daycares any different from any other business.
Which we don't want to do.
Which we don't want to do, and that's the truth. Again, and you took the words out of my mouth, I'm not concerned about what Connecticut does.
Right.
The precedent that we should be concerned about is what Indiana does. And until the state laws can vary, I have no idea what the state laws are in those other jurisdictions. But what I would be concerned about is in conjunction with the new law that pretty much said you could not discriminate against the home daycares. And again, this is not about home daycares. I'm not trying to make it about that. This is about all home-based businesses. We're just simply using daycares as an example. As an attorney, I would be equally concerned. If I wanted to open up an office in my neighborhood, clearly I would hope to have more than 2 cars a day. I would be barred from doing that.
Right.
So it has nothing to do with daycare. That's not my pushback. It's all businesses and the restrictive nature that you would be putting on there when it's not necessary. You already have the right. That business would have to come to this body. That community would have an opportunity to remonstrate against that business, and then you could vote accordingly like you've already and always have done. Once this law is passed, and it is a law, an ordinance is a law, it's the law of the city, you would be saying, no, after 2 facilities meet that criteria, you would be barred. Now, Attorney Poe is absolutely correct. You could now come back and try to rezone, but that's an even more difficult process to get something totally rezoned, where right now, you have the right to come and this body could vote it up and down as you see fit. So, I mean, not to be the dead horse, I think some of the points have been made for me. The state has made it less restrictive, but now you're gonna come back, and again, it's not about daycares, so it's a bad example for me to even use, but you're now creating, and you have every right to do so under home rule. There's nothing that you're doing here that's outside your discretion. The question is, why? When you already have the authority. It already has to come before this body for approval. What's the need for this more restrictive nature, which takes that approval, in my opinion, away from you, and you would never even hear it. If someone came to the city to petition and the planning director was able to substantiate that there are 2 businesses already that meet that criteria, the issue would never even get to the council. And that's what's scary to me. You're taking power from yourself.
Mr. President?
Yeah, sure.
I see it just the opposite, because, you know, one of the things that we have these planning meetings and we often have home-based businesses, and I see it just as the opposite, not so much as regulating business, but protecting residential neighborhoods. Residents, you know, residential neighborhoods, if you invest in your home, you invest in your property, you want it to remain residential. And I see that this ordinance would preserve that residential character of the neighborhoods by restricting it to the 2 businesses. And it would alleviate the need for the planning committee and the council to have to hear every little home business that's gonna open up. Because that way, it's already said, we've got a residential area, we want to protect the residential area, and that's, you know, that's our purpose. And so we don't want any more businesses in those residential areas. We've got plenty of land around here for businesses to operate. They don't need to operate in residential areas. That should be preserved for the people who want to invest there and make a home where their children can play in the street or whatever without worrying about traffic. My concern is, it sounds to me like it would encompass the Airbnbs, because you're going to have more than 2 cars a week. And was that intended? I mean, do we want to do that? Because I know in the first district, we have a lot of Airbnb properties, and we have not regulated those. And I think it would be interesting to see how many businesses we have registered as businesses that are in residential areas. Because I'm in favor of the ordinance in the sense that it preserves the residential nature of these neighborhoods. We have some really wonderful old neighborhoods with some old architecture, some real character to them, the mid-century modern architecture that's in the first district and some of the other areas, you know, and then we have plenty of room for commercial and retail. So I look at it more as protecting the residents and the residential investment in the city than I look at it as restricting business. And I don't think it restricts, I don't think there was a Commerce Clause problem because that's for interstate commerce, the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. So I don't think that's a problem. But I just think that it's important if we want to make a stand that we want to protect residential neighborhoods, that's what we would be doing with this ordinance. And then we wouldn't have to listen to every little thing that came up, you know, and we wouldn't have to decide that. I think it's, some of it is an inefficient use of the council's authority and power.
Just briefly, if I was an advocate for the executive branch, I would fully adopt that that rationale. But I'm not. I'm an advocate for the council. And in fact, the ordinance was put in place to give you the authority. Otherwise, the executive branch would have complete control over this issue, as this ordinance would clearly do. I don't know if Airbnb, I assume Airbnbs would be included because 2 or more cars will be there, they would be included. You may be overworked, but that is what the intent was for, to put a check on the executive branch. So the executive branch does not have the unilateral authority to make these decisions. This ordinance would give them that. There would be no recourse for a citizen who wanted to come and challenge the decision of the planning director. Nothing personal to you, of course. But per the law of the city, the planning director would be absolutely correct. Ordinance 2019-09, wherever we are, says that you can't have any more than 2. There are already 2. You're done. There would be no redress. I guess they could sue, but they could not go to the legislative branch of government, which they can now do. If the planning director says no, as the planning commission, this one and several others have, you have the right to now come to the legislative branch and appeal that decision. After this is passed, you would not have that right. So again, I'm concerned. I don't back up from my commerce argument. I respect any attorney's opinion. That's what we all do. But I believe it does violate that. In addition to that, more importantly, as I indicated, I believe it strips this council of authority. Why would you ever want to do that? When you already have the right to say no. If a residential area is oversaturated with businesses, you have the right to say no right now. This takes that right away. It's already no, period. You have no say. That's my general concern, even more than the commerce argument. You're taking power from yourself when you already have the right to vote any ordinance that comes to you down, as you have, and I assume you'll do again. This takes that power away. You don't have the right to say no. It doesn't even get to you.
I have to agree with the attorney on this. Basically, if we would pass this, basically me and my wife have cornered the market in our block. Could no one else open up because there's already businesses that we operate inside our home. Yes, she does, and myself, so no one else can even do anything if they wanted to. Airbnb, that's a good example there. We are seeing more of those popping up. I'm looking to do those myself. You would definitely stop progress from happening inside the city when we have an issue with our housing stock. People are trying to do something with the housing stock. And what we have seen with people open up home-based businesses, it's been a plus. Now these are additional properties now that we know that's a headache that we all have, you know, that we don't have to have because these homes are occupied with something taking place in it. So I couldn't support it.
What about, I'm sorry, Councilman Brown.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just had 2 concerns. One, about the ordinance itself. I mean, where did the idea come to even create this ordinance? Oh, you didn't? So it was your idea?
I wasn't gonna throw you under the bus.
That's okay.
But he was scared to put his name on it.
Put your name on it.
We don't have a conversation about this because the about too many daycares in neighborhoods. People want to protect the integrity of their investment and their neighborhood. And there are people on 21st Avenue got 4 of them with flags up and stuff. No one's doing anything
But
about it.
that's something that we
They're
need to
advertising.
do. No, but if that's a problem, that's something we need to do, where we always
Right.
monitor the signage there, on daycares and things. And so, Mr. White talked about landscaping for bits and things.
Right.
That's something that falls back on us as a body. If that's a problem, we need to create something. If you're gonna open a home-based business, you can't put 10 feet tall
Right.
flags and everything
They
in.
exist.
Or
It's
something.
what they
But-
do.
But that's a problem that we need to correct as a legislative
Okay,
body.
and I think you
that.
need to correct it, because I tend to agree with Attorney Wyatt, Councilwoman Wyatt. You know, people who have invested in their property and they've lived there for years and spent a lot of money investing in their property. And they don't want 5 or 6 daycares in their block, and I understand that. But as you said, we do have the right to do something about it, that we haven't been doing it. Because as I drive down the street, I see these daycares with all these flags flying around all over the place, and we're not doing anything about it. So, you know,
And we gotta find a balance.
But don't they have the
because
right
the
to
person who
advertise?
made
well, I don't know what.
Because
what-
we asked about a sign. Don't you always ask them how big of a sign?
There's a
Those
sign
are
ordinance also.
portable.
But
Those
actually,
are
here,
I don't
portable.
know.
Those flags
I
are.
don't know what the,
But code enforcement should be citing if they're not,
mhm.
if they're not complying with the sign ordinance and that kind of thing. I don't think that we should put any more work on the council, because I think there are bigger things that the council should be doing than monitoring,
flags.
flags and signs on home
Yeah,
businesses.
right.
I really think that it's a good ordinance, because it takes away, it sets in place that this is how we see our city. We want our city residential areas to be protected. And we want people to know, if they buy a home in Gary, in a residential neighborhood, they don't have to worry about the discretion of the council and different businesses popping up. They know that there can't be any more than 2. And I think actually 2 in a block, I wouldn't want 2 in my block. And,
Yeah.
if you think about it, do you want businesses in your own residential blocks? Or do you want to leave it to the discretion of the council every time? If you're going to invest in a home here, you may not want that. You may want to know that this is the law of this city. And if I want to invest, $500,000 in a home here, I can know for sure that there's not going to be business opening up, because there are already 2 businesses in this block.
And the other example I like to cite too, we have seen in this council, people come from other communities. These are not home-based businesses.
Right.
These are commercial businesses. They are under the disguise of a home-based business.
But you all keep passing them too.
That's the danger in the whole
So,
thing.
no, the danger
That we
is
keep
telling them, no, we
passing
keep
them,
on
we're
going.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the last time we passed one because the lady
You have
lived
to have
in
a better one than
Illinois.
this one.
I've got a solution. I hope I do. I hope I do. I hope I don't let you know. So, here's what I'm thinking with this, because everybody's making fantastic points.
Yeah, it just needs.
What if you start with the presumption that you can't have more than 2 public home-based businesses on a block? And if an individual wants to petition, and it gives the power to the council, they have to get a majority of the members on that block, or the residents on that block, to approve that business before that can go forward.
We have a problem with neighbors now with her, okay?
Yeah.
Let's give it
The
something for this.
presumption idea is a
She
good
got
one,
problems with her neighbors.
because
they
that
can
way
feud.
the
Now she
council
wanna
could
open
still have some
something and
discretion, but the potential business owner would have to rebut the presumption and say, all right, I should, whatever, there's a need for this other business.
So Councilwoman, you 2 live in Melville, you 2 live in Towson. She and I live in Glen Park, Councilwoman, and she lives in the Midtown area. So Gary is a tale of different communities, and every
Right.
community has
Right.
a different need. So
Right.
you can't just pass one bill based on what you see in your neighborhood. I can't pass it based on what I see. We have to be able to understand that what we're putting together is based on the masses, not the few.
Well, we can do districts
Because
if you
no,
want.
there you go again.
No, there I go again, I didn't say anything.
No, because you didn't address the B&B, but Airbnb, stuff about that, because you forgot about that when you put all this together. Now you
I
backed
didn't
up.
put it together.
No, I'm just saying
I
you
had
did. You got it
nothing
right
to
there.
do with
It's
that.
Charity, Mr. Charity. But
I
I'm rolling now. No.
We had conversations about
We
it.
cannot have it.
I can address the short-term rentals, which is that the state of Indiana has a law that short-term rentals cannot be regulated any stricter than they are regulated by state law. So short-term rentals are a very difficult thing to regulate, so that's why that is not something that is really taken into account here. Councilwoman Wyatt, we have had discussions, and I think that we should move forward with having Airbnbs register as, we have a motel ordinance, we have a B&B ordinance.
Put
which
all
can
of it in
include
one
them.
piece, so everybody gets a piece of it. Don't just throw one ordinance, this ordinance, and that one. Let's put it all together so we can clearly understand.
I don't think we're ready to pass this at this
We can
point.
wait.
I think we need, I don't think we're ready.
I agree with you.
I don't.
And one other concern I have, Councilwoman, what other community in Indiana has passed an ordinance similar to this? Indiana, no other, because see, marijuana is legal in Illinois and Michigan, but not in Indiana. So my point is, we're a little different here in Indiana. So I really need to know what's going on with the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready.
Let me say this, I talked to, some people in other communities, they don't have the problem that we have in Gary, with everybody trying to put a home-based business in their neighborhoods. They don't.
An
It
example.
seems like everybody wants to come to Gary and take advantage of us and put them in our neighborhoods.
Well, stop them. Stop them, but we're not stopping them.
But when we use the word problem, where is the problem? Where is the complaints that have come in? Where is it says calls of police and fire going to these facilities? When we say a problem, what generates the problem?
Yeah, if you
Just
don't
because
have a,
one or
if you
two
don't-
people say, I don't want this,
Right.
that doesn't mean there's a problem. Show me where it's really a problem to the community. And we should deal with it. But until then, now this is wasting time.
We're not ready.
A good example, last week, that house has been remodeled, it looks good.
Absolutely.
It's a home-based daycare. When she decides she doesn't want to take care of children anymore, she's still living there, rent is still being generated, and that's the end of it.
And it's an increase to the property value, because they have just up the property. But where look to when she
I
moved
think
in
the
there.
problem is in the terminology and the definition of what is a home-based business. Because you're talking about a person living there. I'm talking about a person that lives in Illinois like
Yeah.
that lady
But
did.
you know,
I'm gonna tell you again.
when you say that,
And
Tell
wanted
it.
to open
But
a
you passed
business.
it, but you passed it.
Fixers.
Cause I can say I was the one that, I didn't vote for it, I remember.
I remember too.
Yeah, she's over here, then brought a whole staff of people.
That's the
Yeah.
problem. And all the complaints I'm hearing.
I'm not
Home-based businesses are different. We're not arguing about a home-based business. You're gonna live there. You know your neighbors. We're looking at people who are using Gary for commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
They don't wanna put it in their neighborhood.
Well, the state of Indiana, for that
Yeah,
matter.
well,
You said what?
But I agree, that maybe this ordinance isn't ready yet. Right? Maybe we need to reconsider it.
Well, I would encourage comments.
Yeah.
I mean, I want this to be a jumping off point so that we
It's
can
good
come to
Yeah,
conversation.
okay.
consensus
Yeah.
about what we
We
can
got a
do.
great debate today.
yeah.
Thank you.
But I just want to say one other thing, and there was a lot of good discussion here, but what I would like to charge you, Ms. Cavita, for doing.
Look what happened last time, though.
One, this is not a waste of time. This is the type of discussions that this council needs to have. A civil discussion on things that are in the community, whether we like it or not. It's good. It's good.
Okay.
So what I would like to charge Ms. Cavitas with today is get us some data. Ask the question in the community, what they think about home-based businesses, daycares and all of it. Give us some information so that we know this is not a waste of time, because I've heard this for a long time. And that's why I asked you guys about it.
I can definitely do that. We have 311 complaints, we have complaints of code enforcement, building department. I can pull all that together.
Okay, yeah, bring us some data. I think that's how we should be making decisions based upon data.
Wow.
And then quantify it. walk by, and
That's
that's just
part
the
of
way
it.
of doing things.
Or-
Mr.
I got 5 questions now, starting with one. First of all, good evening. I remember approximately, say about 12 years, about 2007, 2008, me and my ex-wife had a temp agency. So I had decided it would be cheaper to make it a home-based temp agency instead of purchase the building, because the building took me out of renovation. Anyway, when I tried to apply for the license, I talked to someone, I'm not sure if it was one of your building officers, either the building department or the license department, and they said it was okay to get the license, but I could only have the clients come in to fill out an application, and then basically that's it. What she said, it had to be pretty much what you all are saying. This was about 2007, 2008, I remember specifically. They come in, fill out the application, then I have to call them verbatim, and if they come in for the check, that's different. So I kind of see this kind of somewhat being the same thing. Now my next question that I have, what about like me, now my facilities is, if caught fire and rehab, it's gonna take a long time for y'all to see my face big, you know. But social services, as far as a non-for-profit, is that thrown in the same particular security as far as being home-based?
The only definition I heard was 2 or more visitors a day.
2 or more clients or customers.
Clients or customers a day. So
Right,
of course
because I
it
actually have, I've been doing social service for almost 20 years. I have 707 clients. And then I carry actually 3 phones, and I don't answer most of the time. But okay, so it basically doesn't matter what social service still is not, I mean, you're not asking.
This would treat all home-based businesses the same. Wouldn't matter if you were a nonprofit, for-profit, it would.
And it's still
Yes.
considered, okay, my next, I think on the agenda, what if it's a corporation where you have 2 businesses within, in the same facility?
We're talking about business intruding in a residential.
Right, but I'm saying, in a housing complex, like, well, okay, for example, this house that I have now, I have literally close to 16, 17 rooms, bedroom, okay? So, this is a hypothesis. Supposing that I wanted to have a county, like Luke County, and I wanted to do notary, and then I want to do something else, and up on the corporation. Would that still be considered one business, or is it considered 3 businesses?
I don't know.
I think that's contemplated.
No, I mean, because I'm trying to do before I come before you guys, once I get stuff, because I put money out and I want to be able to get my money back. So I want to ask that. And then, 2 last questions. You say the neighbors. Are the neighbors really truly important as far as when it comes to you guys, you getting along with? Because a lot of my neighbors, the ones the few that I have, I really don't care for. I run a crime watch. No, seriously, I run a crime watch, and then I do these smart and so, some of my neighbors.
Yeah, I like my neighbors. I like me.
Some of them don't really like me too much, but because of the neighborhood, I mean, it's
No BS, so we gonna get the glasses. 15, now, maybe
It's
some.
sad that you did along with your neighbors. You know what I'm saying?
It does.
Okay, and how much is the circumference is do you count for? As far as 3 blocks radius?
It's 40 feet circle.
Okay, well, that's good, because I get most.
Okay, all right. Mr. DeWack is our last public speaker.
Yeah, I was hoping that the council would address some of the problems that we had in the past with the establishment of home-based businesses. And Mr. Chairman, I think you nailed it when you talked about a home being defined as it would be defined in the dictionary, where someone lives. And I've always felt that we missed the point when we're just allowing businesses to be established in houses. And that's very different than a home-based business. So making restrictions on 1 or 2, you miss the entire point, and this is where the council, I think, has gotten off the track in the past. We've allowed people to come into the city and open businesses in houses, not in homes, and they're 2 very different things. If you're living there, you've automatically got restrictions on what you can do. If someone just says, hey, listen, I'm gonna have a business there, car's gonna be coming, I don't have to worry about it because I live in Munster, then you've already started the road towards a problem. If we define a home-based business as being established where someone lives, you're at least honoring the definition of home. You will not find home identified in any definition other than where someone lives. That's the definition of home. So when we just allow these businesses to open up, I think you're opening the door to all the problems that would be part of it, whether it's one business on a block or two businesses on a block. If it's a business and you've got 20 cars coming in every day, that's very different than two businesses with 2 cars coming in every day. So the definition should be, if you're living there, you can't possibly have, 16 kids and 20 staff. You can't possibly have. So start by identifying home businesses as where someone lives, and you've automatically cut a lot of the problems out. And you've mentioned that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nowacki. I appreciate that. Any other questions from the council? If there, pardon? One more hand up. Okay, Ms. Chris.
Yes, sir. I wanted to address the council. First thing I want to say is that I respect you all and I respect the decisions. But when you come in as a petitioner, you're not prepared for the questions. And so I have 2. At the last meeting, it was stated that if I was denied, that I wouldn't be able to reapply for a full year. And so I wanted to know, would that be based upon the home daycare, or would it be placed upon daycare period?
That particular petition, if you found a separate location, that would not be considered, but that petition for that location would be barred for a year. And I should add this, absent a motion to reconsider. Of course, a council member can at any time bring a motion to reconsider, but you as a petitioner would be barred for a year on that location.
Okay, and the second question is to the statement is to the president. The affidavit that you saw is a matter of time, and when you're working with your contractors, they don't come right out. I mean, I'm in the door with them because I contacted them when summer began, but I heard you say, no, you had already scheduled this, which is true, but these are the same people that I'm using because everybody else is bagged up for 8 weeks or more. And that's 2 months down the road. So it's time. The 16th, I may not have anything in writing by then, because it's time factor. And when you're talking about outside, they only work during this season, so everybody's backed up. My contractors are backed up. I've been waiting for them since June.
Okay, I'm not gonna go back and forth. I'll talk to you offline and we'll deal with that at the council meeting, but, so I don't wanna go back and forth with you with that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. I think that concludes our planning meeting today. Thank you all for joining.
Still got an hour.
Meeting is now adjourned.